extraordinary. 1.2 million voices. That is immense. Every one of those voices needs to be heard, and that's what we're here to do.
Yes, and a lot of these young people who have never been asked to share their views before or about their experiences before, their testimonies are so strong. And we saw some key themes coming across. We heard about mental health, the need for inclusion, the need for health education as well. And Dr. Tedros said that we should call on him. So Dr. Tedros will be calling on you. Now we have 2 sessions coming up. One is about meaningful adolescent youth engagement, and we'll be hearing about youth-led organizations, exploring what this really means, sharing their insights, and spotlighting some successes.
Or you can head over to a session called Lights, Camera, Action. I like the sound of that
Yeah.
word. That's where we'll see young leaders meeting with the UK Minister of State in the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, Andrew Mitchell. But first, we're going to hear more about the adolescent town halls that we heard about in the plenary, as well as some 1.8 news reporters. Here we go.
Unite! Unite! Rise! Rise! Lead! Lead!
Создавая безопасные платформы, создавая безопасные диалоги, где они могут задавать свои вопросы и получать точные на них ответы.
We demand that the government develops and enforces anti-bullying policies and trains staff and students on how to prevent them.
I wish to address the obstacles we are facing on the disruption of girls' education in the aftermath of the recent earthquake.
My participation in the Adolescent Girl Town Hall was motivated by the lack of transparency and support systems for adolescent victims of gender-based violence in my community, which stems from our autonomy being ignored.
We need to count on us as adolescent leaders not only to be beneficiaries of state programs, but to be part of the planning processes and implementation of state policies.
We drafted recommendations for civil society, philanthropies, and member states, and we hope you would join us in making sure that all girls get a chance to make the world a better place.
It is our hope that these recommendations are not just listened to, but are also acted upon. We really want to live in a world where the voices and aspirations of adolescent girls are actually listened and upheld.
Youth make up to 16% of the global population, which makes us a huge demographic group, and which is why it is very important to bring us into these spaces where these different topics are being discussed. So we have a huge potential to shape a better and healthier future for all. We bring the creativity, we bring the fresh perspectives and ideas into the discussion, and so we need to be equal partners in the decision-making processes.
More than any man can give to you, baby. 'Cause you were beautiful to me. I know many guys them love you, but I'm the only one for you. See all the love.
As a kid growing up in Norway, I grew up diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexic, and I was having a lot of problems with a lot of energy and didn't know what to do with all that burst of energy. And having a place where I can go and dance and have people with different colors and different cultures just take me in as a kid, letting me burst out with the energy with dance and with each other was just the most perfect thing growing up with. And I think it just shows how much it just contributed to my life and how I am now. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love all of those answers. Thank you for sharing that.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'd like first to thank you for the opportunity to bring in the perspectives of young healthcare professionals to this very important roundtable. It was only 6 months ago when my country, Egypt, hosted the UN Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I was lucky to be appointed by the COP27 president as a young medical doctor who herself saw the detrimental impacts of climate change on her patients and generation as the first official youth envoy. 1.8 billion young people, including children and adolescents, are now shouldering the impacts of climate change on their lives and livelihoods. Almost 1/3 of deaths of children under the age of 5 is directly linked to environmental degradation. 1 out of 5 children lack access to safe drinking water, while air pollution affects young people the hardest. This is also combined with the exacerbation of the inequalities in access to healthcare services, education, and decent job opportunities, especially for young women and girls who make up 90% of the climate migrant population, and also experience gender-based discrimination and violence that is aggravated by the scarcity of resources. Climate change is also affecting the mental health of young people, from despair at the unpredictable climate disasters to the anxiety about the future of mankind. These feelings are further heightened by the disconnect between young people and their governments and public institutions. Yet, I'm not here to tell the story of my generation's distress, distrust, and disappointment. I'm here to share that young people around the world are leading the climate challenge. They are doing this with innovation, with dedication, and most importantly, with a powerful health argument that climate action is going to provide the conditions for a world where no one has to ever face any health challenges. Creating resilient societies with cleaner air, access to green spaces, safer sources of energy, as well as a well-connected community. I'm proud to be part of the beautiful health community of young healthcare professionals who believe in their responsibility as the first-line responders to the impacts of climate change on health. Medical students are working with their institutions to integrate climate change in curriculum. Young health practitioners are prescribing nature to improve their patients' well-being when connecting with nature, as well as decarbonizing their healthcare facilities. However, such youth-led bottom-up approaches remain siloed from the top-down negotiation processes because of the little dialogue between the ministers that are in the negotiating rooms and young people who are on the outside.
Unite! Unite! Rise! Rise! Lead! Lead! Young people, this is our time!
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night for those of us who are still a couple of hours behind us. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the Global Forum for Adolescents 2023. So this is the first ever global gathering of adolescents, advocates, and global leaders to meet passionate champions, experts, and leaders during some 2 days of exciting days of debate, dialogue, and action. So we're really excited to have you here. The Global Forum for Adolescents is a chance for young people like us to come together and take stock of the progress that we've made towards the SDGs and to figure out how we can even do better in the future. So we'll be hearing from leaders, sharing our stories and our experiences and new ideas and working together to find solutions that will make a real difference. So once again, thank you so much to everyone from joining us across different time zones and different continents. I'm Beatrice Okech, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. And I'm here on behalf of the Yield Hub, where I serve as a partnerships and communications advisor. I'm super excited to be here with you today. We have an exciting session lined up. We have some incredible speakers joining us today who I will introduce to you over the next couple of minutes. But before we start, I'd like to just talk about the theme of our session today, which is meaningful adolescent and youth engagement, an unfulfilled promise and the road ahead. So it's in the name, guys. So we're really just trying to dive into, the experiences that many youth advocates, adolescent and youth advocates have had, in the field of youth engagement, and highlighting their lived experiences and using that as lessons that we can use to move forward. So before we start the session, I would like to jump into our rules of engagement. I would like to request next slide, please. Thank you. So our rules of engagement for the day are, sorry, yeah, I can see a little, yeah, it's clear now. So we have mindfulness, we have respect, we have empathy, we have listening, non-judgment, confidentiality, safety, and well-being. So let's keep that in mind over the next couple of minutes of this session. And just as a note, our safeguarding focal points for today are myself. My email is on the slide at beatrice@yieldhub.global, and we have Bhavya as well from the PMNCH team, whose email is nandini@who.int. So I'll just briefly go through the agenda and then we can just get started. So we'll have a brief welcome session, which is what we're doing right now. And then we'll dive into the panel contributions. And finally, we'll have a Q&A from the audience where you can share with us your thoughts, any questions that you might have, and we'll have our incredible speakers, plug into that. So, but before we get started, we just want to, pick your brains a little bit with a quick Mentimeter. So the instructions on how to use this are on the screen. You can go to menti.com. Just scan it and you should be able to just dive into the questions. I hope you haven't lost me. Can everyone hear me? All right. Okay, great. So to our tech team, do we have any, responses coming in? Once again, go to www.menti.com, use the code 81616736, or use the QR code to dive into the Mentimeter questions for the day. We really just want to pick your brains as we get started with this session. All right. Any responses coming in, tech team? Okay, all right. We'll dive into those a little bit later on in the session. Right now, let's just dive into our first speaker of the day. Her name is Carla Laura Pacorina from Bolivia. She's a member of the Red Nacional to Decides organization in Bolivia, as mentioned. And I'll just quickly introduce her and then we'll go right into a video that she shared with us. She couldn't be here with us today, but she did, send us her insights early on. So Carla Laura is 21 years old and she's a young feminist activist for sexual and reproductive health. And she's an active youth leader of the Red Nacional de Líderes y Lideresas Juveniles. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this. Spanish is not one of my languages. And where she holds a position of spokesperson for political advocacy for the network in spaces of representation, such as the Pact for Sexual Rights and Reproductive Rights, the Pro-Secularism Committee, and Montevideo Alert. And she is a university student majoring in public accounting and law. So we'll just dive into the video and listen to what she has to say to us today. Over to the tech team.
La participación significativa de las juventudes en la red Decides es muy importante, pues se debe ver a las juventudes como una fuerza positiva para el cambio social, transformacional y consciente. Ser protagonistas y en este caso
to be
representantes
protagonists
de espacios, and in this case, representatives in different spaces, not only at the departmental level, but also national and international level, which is being a feminist organization that promotes the full exercise of sexual rights, having adolescents and young people within the organization helps to act in different axes, such as advocacy, social audit, and accountability. In Bolivia, youth representation needs to be more meaningful and effective, going beyond just symbolic gestures. Encourage youth to take part in project management, collaborate with initiatives led by and for youth, facilitate the inclusion of youth in the processes, not only of national consultations, but also local ones, including through the incorporation of new technologies. It would help us a lot to know the perspective of other youth because, as you know, youth are diverse. The impact of youth in the mainly their representation is essential so that we can reflect on our situations, identify our needs, influence the definition of what our priorities are, make demands and proposals much more effective, and be protagonists not only for our present but also our future to continue being agents of change.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that video with us. We're off to a great start, pushing for the meaningful engagement of adolescents and young people all over the world. Great to hear from Bolivia as well. So we'll dive into the next session, which is a panel discussion. But before we do that, I'll introduce you to the amazing speakers that we have on board today. So we have Rushna Zubair, who's 18 years old, and she's from Pakistan. She is an adolescent leader working on girls' rights in Pakistan, and she is currently the girl advisor at Adolescent Girls Investment, that is AGIP. She's also the ambassador 2022 to 2023 for M4M Volunteer Program 3.0 to promote mental health and well-being, focusing on youth, especially girls of Asia Pacific regions. In the past, she's contributed to several key policy spaces on young feminist agendas, like the well-being management with schoolgirls during COVID-19 with UNDP and the gender transformative youth priority action agenda by UN Women. Next, we have Belinda from Hong Kong with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. She is a sustainability advocate and aspiring social entrepreneur. She founded the Food IE app, which aims to provide easy to understand resources for students to reduce their food-based carbon emissions. With a particular interest in addressing food insecurity, Belinda has volunteered both in the UK and in her home city of Hong Kong with community farms and food redistribution NGOs to ensure that low-income families can access high-quality, locally grown produce. Next, we have Fortune, who is 23 years old from Zimbabwe, from the organization My Age Zimbabwe. He is an advocate for the health, rights and well-being of young people, and he has been working with My Age Zimbabwe as a community mobilization champion for young people, as well as part of the My Age Zimbabwe's Theatre for Development team. He's also the president of the organization's Youth Action Movement under a regional program supported by IPPF, which has more than 300 young people who work to improve health outcomes of young people in his country. Next, we have Marie-Claire, who is 26 years old from Switzerland. Marie-Claire, a national and international climate policy consultant and advocate, is also the co-founder of Youth Negotiators Academy, a formal focal point of the youth constituency at the United Nations Climate Change and former vice chair on youth at the United Nations Food System Summit. She is a known climate justice activist and public speaker for a just transition towards sustainable development and ambitious climate action. She was the youngest negotiator of Switzerland to any UN climate negotiations and is currently training young diplomats from all over the world for multilateral processes. So as you can hear, everyone, we have some incredible speakers with us today, some very, inspiring young people from all over the world doing some incredible things. So I'll just dive right into, our panel for today, with our first question being directed to Rushna.
Yes,
Yeah, Fortune, please mute. Thank you. So yeah, based on your experience, what has helped you and your fellow adolescent girls in meaningfully engaging with the internal governance of a global coalition? How can global alliances overcome challenges related to power dynamics and hierarchies when integrating meaningful girl and youth engagement into their governance and decision-making spaces? Over to you, Rushna.
So currently, as have been explained, I'm working with Asia, which is a global feminist coalition, and to meaningfully engage their girl advisors, which is me and my fellow advisors with them, they are applying three main policies, which are safeguarding, financial assistance, and co-creating collective learning and focus on inclusion. So basically, through employing these three approaches, they are allowing me and my other advisors to meaningfully engage with them. So first of them is the safeguarding policy, which I'll be emphasizing on. As we might have felt, the youth voices and the adolescent voices, they are not taken into account because we are too young or too inexperienced to weigh in on the decisions about our future. However, Egypt does not believe in this perspective, and this is very much evidenced in the fact that they employ the safeguarding policy. So what happens in the safeguarding policy is that advisors from age 10 to 19 are onboarded together with a safeguarder who could be their guardian or a mentor from the NGO. And these safeguarders act as a co-pilot on the advisory journey. So they basically assist us to grasp onto the complexity of the issues that we discuss upon in the age of spaces. So if you're talking about anything that is faced by the adolescent girls and that is inhibiting their rights to be given to them, that would be, and advisors as age 13 or 10 are present in the meeting and they cannot grasp onto that complexity, the safeguarder could always help them out. This also emphasizes how Egypt is not disregarding assistance for fellow advisors and successfully eliminating the age barrier as well. Moreover, so they also provide financial assistance for accessibility. So we are not lacked from the resources, from the digital connection, or any obstacle that can come because of connectivity issues or lack of resources. For example, gadgets or devices, they are all eliminated. So we are very strongly digitally connected in the age of spaces, as well as people who are not traditionally digitally connected, they can also come on board as an advisor and can also connect and give on their perspective. So the Egypt is very much inconsiderate of the knowledge, of the time, and the perspectives that every adolescent that has to bring it on, can bring on the table, right? Moreover, so they also are very considerate of our personal time, because the meetings that are scheduled, they start right on time and they end right on time as well, so we can do our own personal things. And the last approach that Egypt takes in order to tackle through the power dynamics and the hierarchies that comes in a way of adolescents being on the table to decide their own future and their own right, is that they allow co-creating, they allow collective learning, and they focus on inclusion. So we have monthly meetings scheduled through Zoom call. And in these monthly meetings, we discuss upon the upcoming priorities. We can co-lead them as well, and we can represent Egypt externally to other boards as well. Similarly, these meetings also have interpretation in 3 languages, so French, Spanish, and English. All languages interpreters are present right there, and they're translating live, right, like it is in this meeting as well. So advisors can really bring their message forward in whatever language that they're comfortable in. And we also have one-on-one focal point meetings. And in these meetings, the focal points make sure that we are not overwhelmed by the issues or the work that we are doing, and we are fully comprehending whatever is going on in these meetings. And we also have buddy pairs. Through the buddy pairs, basically, we are connected with one other girl advisor, and we can form a connection with them. And we can garner their support, we can reciprocate that support, and that really helps to embrace all the perspectives because of the diversity that is in there in the group, in the advisory board, we can embrace all the wealth of perspectives and bring an informed decision for the adolescents that will basically unfold our advisory journey. So AGIT is it's basically treating us as equals in order to bring this meaningful engagement with adolescents. That is the three main approaches that AGIT uses.
All right, thank you so much. It's incredible to hear about how AGIP is working hard with its youth advisors, adolescent girl advisors to be exact, to really, dismantle the, systems of like power dynamics and how they make a significant effort to, ensure that these girls are fully engaged and included, and they have actual decision-making authority in the work that AGIP does. I'm really about walking the walk and talking the talk, and really just ensuring that our money is where our mouth is. And so really just ensuring that these adolescent girls also have the resources to be able to do the work and, really contribute to the work that the organization is doing at the global level and even at national levels is really exciting. So I think we'll segue very quickly into the next question with Belinda. Which starts off, which really now brings us to more of a sort of national level. So based on your experiences, Belinda, what roles can organizations and governments play in supporting and forefronting youth-led initiatives, and how can they ensure that these efforts are sustainable and responsive to the evolving needs? Over to you, Belinda.
What a great question. Thank you so much, Beatrice, for the introduction and the opportunity. And Rishma, that was so inspiring to hear your sharing. I think before I respond to the question, I'd like to share more about the youth initiative that I'm currently representing with support of GAIN, which is the Act for Food, Act for Change campaign. So it's a global movement of young people that are calling for cross-sector and industry mobilization to drive the transition towards a more sustainable food system. It's now 2 years old, this movement. It was founded by 2 young food advocates after the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, and now it's being led by 30 young people from all around the world that are also leading local and regional efforts to engage young people. So since over the past 2 years, we've had 160,000 young people and counting sign the Act for Food Pledge, which brings together people from all over the world to commit to their personal actions to contribute to climate action and larger scale change. And of course, the campaign is run, as I mentioned, with support of GAIN, as well as Food Foundation. So there's 2 nonprofit organizations that act as facilitators. And so this is a good segue, I think, into the question of what roles can organizations play, as well as governments, in forefronting youth initiatives. And I have 3 responses to that. I think, firstly, these organizations really need to take youth-led initiatives seriously and see how they can uniquely add value in alignment with their own goals long-term. And I think in particular, what young people and their initiatives can bring is very valuable insights representing the perspectives of young people globally. So if I use the example of the campaign, we've done a lot of really extensive research with conversations with so many young people, as I said, over 160,000, on what they want to see in a sustainable food system. And we've done the work to really gather these insights. And so there's a lot of value in really having these insights recognized by organizations and governments, for example, in alignment with their national pathways, which was a really key focal point of the Food Systems Summit. I think the second point also is to really provide platforms to incubate young youth-led initiatives. Young people have a lot of ideas and passions and skill sets and networks, but sometimes it's really challenging to access aspects such as funding or long-term, for example, strategy and guidance. So there's a real opportunity here to have organizations and governments step in and provide some of these infrastructural resources or financial resources that will really help empower young people to become the leaders that they can be. And also finally ensuring that young people are co-creators of the initiatives and not just beneficiaries. For example, young people can be part of national country delegations to events like what Marie Claire's had a lot of experience in, but also in youth boards in countries where, before ideas and policies get written up. For example, in the UK, I'm currently part of the Future Food Movement as a youth advisory representative, which is really giving me directly the platform to engage with food retailers to amplify what young people want to see in a sustainable strategy for retailers, and also really ensure that there's these long-term, and this is to answer the second part of the question about making it more sustainable, ensuring it's responsive to evolving needs, is to ensure that there are organizational structures that can give wings to ideas. It's really important to also recognize that, this might not be possible across different countries because of various political reasons. So it's really about ensuring that there are avenues that are open to young people where they feel like their ideas can be sustained, and there are the structures in place to ensure, when someone, perhaps their commitments change, they enter the next phase of their career, for example, that there is a pipeline of young people that are educated and upskilled to continue the passion and the drive behind these youth-led events. And that's what it really takes to build a very resilient and also impactful youth-led initiative through these different partnerships with different sectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Belinda. And I think we're already starting to see a theme in this session. We're seeing resources, guys. So for young people, for adolescents and young people to be able to do the work that they, are so great at, we need resources for that. And it's also really great to hear you talk about having young people not as beneficiaries, but really co-creators of these interventions. We're talking in different spaces. It's so great to hear you come in from the angle of, food systems and food security. We've had someone talk about sexual and reproductive health as well, and gender equality. So it's really great to see that these are actionable sort of tools and systems and actions that we can take in the different spaces that adolescents and young people work in. So off to a really great start, guys. I'm really happy to just be in this space and listen to the incredible insights that you have to share today. So we'll go ahead and hear from Fortune. So Fortune, based on your experience of leading community mobilization and youth networks, how can key stakeholders like government, philanthropy, and NGOs practice equitable partnerships with young people, particularly those from marginalized communities or backgrounds? Over to you.
Firstly, I would say there is need for them to understand that as young people, we come from different communities, and especially for young people that come from key and marginalized communities, there is need to be culturally responsive and inclusivity. So the organizations and institutions need to create an environment where we as young people, we feel that we are welcomed and we are respected. This means that they need to be aware of and response to the unique experiences and the unique needs that we young people want. There's also need to be inclusive in terms of language, just because you understand that especially young people from key and marginalized communities, they are not eloquent speakers when it comes to English and other languages that are needed in these high-level meetings. There is also need to train the staff that will be working with young people so that they understand the unique needs of the young people. Taking from Belinda, there is need to provide resources in the support. So if you want to work with young people from the marginalized communities, there is need to have the resources and provide the support that the young people need so that they can participate in the activities. There is need to provide the financial assistance, transportation, and also mentorship. And also speaking on mentorship, there is need to train the young people so that at the end of the day, even if they are coming from the marginalized communities, so that at the end of the year, you see that we took this young person from this point, and now they are also able to participate and also speak in the high-level meetings. There's also need to create youth voice and leadership. Young people need to be involved from the planning stage, just because you'd see that at times, most of the times, you'd see that organizations come with their programs. They've already planned everything and they just want you to be part of the beneficiaries. So we are saying, as young people from the key and marginalized communities, there is need to be there on the planning. There is need to also be there on the designing of how the program will be laid out. And there is need for us to be also part of the evaluating team to see what did we do right, what did we do wrong. And lastly, there is need to be transparent and accountable. Organizations and institutions should be transparent about their goals and expectations. They should also be accountable to the young people they are working with and be willing to listen to the feedback and the changes that are needed. You'd see that sometimes programs come with, I would say, you would already have planned everything. But then when you get into the community, we as young people tell you that the way we are doing things, or maybe the way that we were supposed to be doing things, yes, we agreed on the planning phase that we are supposed to do this and this and this. There's need to be able to collect the feedback and make the necessary changes that needs to be made when it comes to the programming. This would mean that young people need to be given opportunities and they need to share ideas, they need to make decisions, they need to take the leadership roles. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Fortune. What really stood out to me, in your talk was just really about capacity building for young people, particularly those from marginalized communities. We have to recognize that we're all coming from different starting points and we need to, sort of level the playing ground so that everyone is able to contribute meaningfully to the different issues that affect us. And also something that really stood out to me was the issue of, how young people are engaged in, the planning, in the implementation and in the evaluation of interventions. A lot of the time, we talk about co-creating before we actually implement, but no one ever goes back to try and evaluate what happened, what went wrong, what went right, and how, young people's voices and adolescent and young people's voices can really, fit into such spaces. So it's really great to hear that perspective. And finally, it's also great to hear, the perspective around how donor entities, for instance, could be flexible, or how implementing organizations could be flexible in their interventions as well. A lot of the times we come in and we're very set in terms of what it is that we want to do, and we are not very flexible in terms of accommodating, the evolving needs of the people that we're working with, of the adolescents and the youth. So I think that's something, a really great takeaway that we can take forward in the different work that we do in the future. So thank you so much for that, Fortune. It's really incredible to hear from you. Such a great session, such wonderful insights from our different speakers. So we are coming to the end of our panel discussion, but we do have one last speaker who will, be sharing their insights with us via video. Their name is Sudipta, who is an anti-caste queer feminist from India with 6 years of experience working on key themes of sexual and reproductive health and rights, queer rights, communications, and advocacy. They are a trainer, writer, advocate for SRHR for youth. As a policy engagement officer at the YP Foundation, they work towards building parallels between regional, national, and international advocacy spaces to demand equitable, accessible, and quality SRHR services for young people. They are also a regional convener of SYAN, that is the Southeast Asian Youth Health Action Network, a multi-country consortium to build young people's movements on this issue. They have been involved in creating advocacy campaigns, handbooks, curriculums, and other resource materials. Additionally, they have also been writing on key topics of caste, queerness, sexuality, and pop culture on multiple media platforms. So as you can see, incredible insights already. So over to the tech team to hear from Sudipta.
Hi, my name is Sudipta. My pronouns are they and them. I work as the Policy Engagement Officer in an India-based organization called the YP Foundation. As a young queer person from South Asia who also belongs to a marginalized caste identity, when I think of meaningful adolescent and youth engagement, I feel it's extremely important that we unpack the understanding of meaningful and also explore what exactly meaningful means for different youth and young people. A lot of time there is a homogeneous imagination of young people which is devoid of the intersectional realities that we come from. It's important that we acknowledge the intersectional reality that young people come from, which is beyond gender and age, but also entails caste, class, race, ability, religion, etc. All of this also determines our relationship with the state, the nature of the citizenship, and our access to different kind of services. Along with this, the kind of background that young people often come from also determines the relationship with the state and the kind of power dynamics they have with different kind of social structures. For example, unhoused poor youth or adolescents and young people engaged in labor work with or without education, and the kind of civic amenities they might have in their neighborhood. All of this contributes to the larger ecosystem of youth development and leadership. True meaningful adolescent and young people's participation can only be achieved when we acknowledge the intersectional realities that people come from, and we also tailor the interventions and approaches depending on the intersectional realities and the context that young people come from, and don't come up with a single formula and try to fit all young people into that. This will also ensure that we are addressing different concerns around citizenship of young people along with health and SRHR. And with this approach, we can truly achieve meaningful youth and adolescent engagement. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Shudipta. Before we dive into the Q&A section, I would like to hear, and I know we would all love to hear from Marie-Claire. So Marie, what strategies have been successful in bridging the gap between national level policies and international youth governance structures, particularly in the climate change space, ensuring that youth voices are heard and respected? And what messages would you give to organizations and member states who would want to forefront youth, adolescent and youth leadership onto their structures? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beatrice. And it's always hard to come last because so much has already been said. And I think like my job is also to bring some of these threads together now, because we have heard from previous panelists what is really crucial. I don't want to repeat what has been said, but really kind of add to this layer. And what you mentioned, I think the question is really good, because what is important is that young people are part of the decision making and bring their local expertise and their national desires to these international tables in businesses, but also in the negotiation process, for example, at the United Nations. The Youth Negotiator Academy is specifically enabling and empowering and equipping young people as positive agents of change in these decision-making processes, because we do believe that the voices of young people and their innovative ideas are really needed to move forward in the direction of an inclusive future. But it's not only just nice to have people there. We talked about accountability before. I think it's also very crucial, and we know that while we have more young people in the room, actually decision-making also changing from other people because they feel more accountable to the youth generation currently living on this planet, but also future generations. So as a recommendation for member states, but also business, and I mean everyone who wants to include young people, it's not a tick the box exercise. It's not just kind of like something kind of a fast to achieve goal, because it really needs time, it needs dedication, it needs the resources we already talked about, but it's not only the financial resources. There are like many other resources, and I would like to talk a little bit about this, because I really think it's important that when we bring young people into these spaces, that we ensure that their voices are really heard. And for this, we need targeted capacity building trainings, meaning that we have to understand the process we are suddenly being part of. For example, we are training young people to take part in the International Climate Conference, the upcoming COP28, which is going to be held in Dubai. So people have to understand what are these spaces, they have to understand how it works, what are the processes, they also have to understand what are the thematics we're going to talk about, but also the leadership and soft skills. And very often for young people, it's very hard to even voice their concerns, right? So I think that capacity building is an absolutely crucial element here. Then also community building. It's not only about what we know, but also who we know. So giving young people the ability to kind of get to know each other, but also embedding then this community of, for example, young negotiators in the wider ecosystem is really crucial, because young people shouldn't be seen just like as a lone group somewhere out there. Then we already talked about the financial resource. Obviously, youth engagement does cost money, and it's important to invest in young people, and really ensuring that the young people can be there and meaningfully engaged. And then my last point would probably be around the mindset. Because what we still see that while young people gain the momentum and while we see young people being engaged, also I think what Belinda mentioned, we have to ensure that there's a mindset that young people can meaningfully contribute and not just like an add-on which we do because it's nice. And for this, we all need to kind of deconstruct some of the mindsets we have on how generations work together. And that's why I feel it's very important to talk about intergenerational leadership, where generations come together to solve the biggest crises we are currently facing. And we have seen a lot of beautiful examples, how we're doing this here. And so I think like if we can really get these four components together, we can have meaningful youth inclusion. And this is something that's no rocket science, honestly. We have everything needed. So every business, every government, every entity, academia right now can actually make a change toward intergenerational leadership by just following these four like outlined areas of work. This is what we are doing at the Youth Negotiators Academy, successfully bringing in young negotiators from over 50 governments around the world in the climate change process. Over to you, Beatrice.
All right, thank you so much. I heard 50 governments and I was like, wow, so inspiring. So, exciting just to hear about the different things and, exciting sort of work that each and every one of you are doing. It's I'm honored to be in this space with you and just to hear, firsthand from your lived experiences. So I would like for us to just check in on our Mentimeter responses just to see what our participants or everyone who's joined in the session had to say. Are we able to see that? Okay. All right. I think we're having a bit of a lag on that end. So I would like to just jump straight into the Q&A session. We have had some incredible questions come in from our participants of the day. So we'll just dive right into that. Our first question will go to Rushna. Sorry. One, how can we ensure that adolescents are involved, in the implementation of different interventions right from the planning stage? How can we do that?
Could you please repeat the question? I had a lag.
All right, no problem at all. So once again, how can we ensure that adolescents and youth are involved from the planning stage in specific interventions?
Okay, so since the planning stage, what we can do is set the priorities right ahead. For adolescents, again, the hardest part is that they cannot grasp onto the complexity of the issue. For instance, if there's an anti-woman campaign, anti-woman law that is being created about early marriages, forced marriages, etc. So the adolescents who are especially in between the ages of 10 to 15, they would find it very difficult to really grasp onto what it actually means, because they're just, with time evolving, you get to understand the complexities of life, and they haven't been familiar with such issues or the surrounding. It could be said for them life is very much rainbows and sunshines at that moment. So for that, I think the initial step should be to involve the safeguarders or the parents that would initially help them to understand what the vision of the platform that they are working with towards this issue is even about. Before the resources, before anything, they should really be able to comprehend the situation in order to effectively then give their own perspectives as well on the issue.
All right. Thank you so much, Rushna, for sharing your insights on that. We are running a bit short on time, but we can definitely squeeze in a few more questions. So we'll dive into question number 2, and this will go to both Belinda and Marie. I'll let you know who can go first. So the question is, will the large number of young people who become activists and give their roles be able to shape new policies? For example, what is done in Indonesia with many problems that must have solutions? So I'm not entirely sure how clear that is, but I do believe that it's, centering about around the fact that there are so many issues that young people face, and there are so many issues that they would like to sort of plug into. So how do you think that they would be able to shape policies for the same? So let's start with Belinda, and then we can move on to Marie.
Yeah, sure. I think I'd love to answer this question with an example, one that I'm also personally quite inspired by. I would say that there's a lot of different avenues that young people can leverage on in terms of the issues that they are passionate about, and that comes from them being able to organize and leverage on their own networks as well. And the example that I want to speak about is one from Hong Kong, where I'm from. There has been a group of dedicated young people who formed a campaign engaging the government on promoting low carbon diets and increasing its acceptability in Hong Kong. So they did a very extensive consumer survey to understand public sentiment towards it, and then submitted a proposal to the government to ask for updating existing dietary guidelines to consider both public and planetary health and incorporate food sector decarbonization into Hong Kong's climate policies, including guidelines on food purchase and green procurement. And so this was a very successful example, I feel, where they really succeeded in engaging with the government to have consultations and really draw on that evidence and their own perspectives, particularly valuable to have young people as consumers. So kind of bringing onto the wider point that young people are so many different roles in society. And so bringing that into their work to engage with governments is really powerful to help governments take youth priorities and their issues that they care about seriously.
All right, thank you. Over to Marie.
Yeah, just to build on what Belinda mentioned, I think we cannot have enough people being engaged, and we need many more young people and also people from all generations engaged, because there's so many solutions out there and there's so many problems you have to tackle. And I think what is relevant also in this question is that the problem or the challenge might be very different for someone living in Indonesia than someone like me living in Switzerland, and all over the world. That's why we need different young people with these different backgrounds coming together into the space, actually working together to come up with the policy solutions which actually are relevant and solving these problems. Because what we are seeing quite often is that policymakers are on a very high level, meta level, talking about the problem, which might not serve the people on ground. And that's why it's so crucial to bring these people with their lived experiences from the front lines into the decision-making rooms to make their voices heard right where it matters. That afterwards, in the implementation, we can actually address these problems meaningfully and overcome the problem. There was also another question a little bit earlier in the chat about how can decision makers ensure that that their interventions and decisions are actually meaningful and impactful. And I think this is exactly where we are failing currently, that we don't have a diverse representation in decision making. It's the same people, very often elderly people, very often also male dominated space, Western countries dominated, who are trying to solve issues for the whole world. And it just didn't work. For the last 30 years, it didn't work. And it's going to fail if you're not massively increasing the diversity of decision makers. But maybe just to end with, we do not need everyone, just rallying to the climate conferences or these international conferences. It's totally fine if you're, for example, saying this is like my village and I want to, solve a problem we are seeing right here in this village. And I think it's very important that we pick kind of the level or the area, the sector we want to engage, and then we see the intersections. Where does my project intersect with, for example, food systems, maybe with policy process, and then we work on these intersections to ensure that we have a smooth alignment with everything. So I hope I could answer the two questions in once.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marie and Belinda. Off of the top of my head, the fact that you've talked about the fact, we can solve problems not just at international sort of spaces, attending conferences and the like, but we can do that at the most granular level, in the communities that we live in, work in. Such a great starting point. So we'll have our final question for the day for Fortune, which is, how do we remain consistent in being, or how do you remain being consistent as a youth activist who has many networks so that we can, work together globally, and whether, after this, would there be a follow-up in terms of like networking engagement with each other?
I would say to remain, even if you are a youth activist, know what you want. Go for, don't be an activist for food, health, politics. Know what you want. Go for what you want. And even if you go to a space, yes, you'll be given opportunities to go to a space. Go to the space, even if they are talking about something else that concerns you, but it's not your line of work. Keep quiet. Say what you need to say when they come to what you are doing. Because if you are an activist of everything, you will lose relevance. And also, I think there is need for us also as young people to be able to measure if we are really making an impact and if we are really being involved, so that we can come up with a tool for meaningful youth engagement, meaningful adolescents and youth engagement. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much, Fortune. So we'll just do a very quick rundown of the Mentimeter responses as we come to the close of this session, just so that we can see everyone's thoughts and really just get to hear from our participants of the day. So our first question was around the age group of our participants. So a lot of us are between the ages of 19 to 24, 30 to 34, and a significant chunk of us are above the age of 35. So I'm thinking these are the guys who, are in decision-making spaces, who really want to hear from adolescents and young people and how they can, actually effect change. So, good to see you here. Good to see everyone. It's also great to see, adolescents from the age of 10 to 18 and other young people from ages 25 to 29. So next question, please, in the Mentimeter. So yeah, oh wow. So we're looking at a global representation of our participants today. We're seeing a lot of people from Africa, from Europe, from South America. This is really great to see, exciting to see that we had a really great representation for this session. So next question, please. Okay, so the last question that we asked for our Mentimeter today was, at which level are you engaging young people? So we have a couple of choices. Unfortunately, I cannot seem to see these properly. They are a bit too tiny for me to read. Yeah, it's quite difficult. So I will have to skip that, unfortunately, but you answered them, so I hope you know what you picked. But yeah, so we are coming to the end of this session. It's been particularly exciting and great for me to just participate as a moderator and hear from the incredible young people that we had here today, adolescents and young people from all over the world. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And really, I hope you're excited for the next couple of days of the GFA, all the sessions. Goodbye.